In every season of life, leadership, or transition, things break. Plans, expectations, relationships, and sometimes what breaks isn't visible, it's internal. But here's the good news. If it was learned, it can be unlearned. And if it was formed under pressure, it can be reshaped in truth. This series is about how we choose our perspective, anchor ourselves in truth, and live from purpose when things don't go as planned. So, you're doing everything you're supposed to be doing. You're leading, you're showing up, you're making decisions all day long. And yet, you feel the weight of what's next on your shoulders. The weight feels tiring, but not in a tired, I need more sleep kind of way. It feels off, not because something is wrong on paper, but because something just feels wrong inside. You're exhausted, you're frustrated, and the negative voices in your head are way too loud and getting way too much airtime. You keep thinking, why does this feel so hard? Why do I feel behind when nothing is technically wrong? And why can't I figure out what's next? You might say you're overwhelmed or burned out or just plain tired. But underneath all of that, there's a quieter question you may not even realize that you're asking. Is this really what I'm here for? Hi, friend. I'm Christina. I help you align with who you are and move forward with clarity and confidence so you can lead and live with purpose, not pressure. And today we're continuing in our series, When Things Break, choosing perspective, truth, and purpose. Because what we carry internally often sounds like a voice, like a loop we keep playing, like a broken soundtrack on repeat in your head. And if you stay with me in this episode, you'll walk away with 3 leadership keys that will help you feel lighter and clearer. You'll learn how to recognize the toxic thoughts that quietly drain you, to release the internal pressure you were never meant to carry, and to replace those thoughts with truth you can return to when leadership feels a little heavy. Because what's exhausting you, it may not be your circumstances. It may be the story you're telling yourself while facing them. You see, leaders carry a weight that is rarely acknowledged. It's the emotional labor, decision fatigue from the constant burden of decisions, the internal pressure to be everything to everyone. You're not just doing the work and leading the tasks, you're thinking about work long after the work is done. You're managing those expectations and outcomes. You're holding space for other people's emotions. And somewhere along the way, you stopped checking in on what you were carrying. Because the truth is, most leaders don't feel exhausted because they're doing too much. They feel exhausted because they're carrying too much inside. And that's where the weight builds. It leads us to our first key. You can't release a weight you haven't recognized. You can't rewrite the broken soundtrack that you haven't identified. Before we move forward, let's identify what a soundtrack is. You're probably familiar with soundtracks as the music to a movie. So how does that apply to my thought life? Well, hang with me. Have you ever had a melody, a chorus, a verse that gets stuck in your head? And maybe it's the chorus to your favorite song. You sing it over and over again. Like, how many times has that song, that verse, that chorus been stuck in your head and you keep singing it and you can't move forward because you can't remember the rest of the song? Well, let me make the connection. John Acuff introduced me to the idea that our thoughts are the soundtracks of our lives, and how overthinking gets in the way of what you want. Are you starting to see how the soundtracks are also the melodies of our lives? And those melodies often get put on repeat. Some of them move us forward, inspire us, and some of them hold us back, keeping us stuck. Once you recognize the soundtrack, you can begin to change the narrative, the story of your song. Noticing the soundtrack is not a weakness, it's wisdom. The soundtrack you believe becomes the story that you live out, and the tone that you lead with. And the stories we tell ourselves will either build our leadership or quietly break it. Strong leaders don't believe every thought they think. They examine it before they follow it. If a soundtrack was learned just like a song, it can be rewritten. If it was formed under pressure, it can be reshaped in truth. But here's what makes this a little tricky. You see, toxic thoughts or broken soundtracks, well, they don't usually sound cruel. They sound plausible, responsible, and they convince us to live in the shoulds. If you've ever said, "I should," and immediately your chest tightens, pay attention. That's a clue. They sound like, "I should already be there. If I slow down, everything will fall apart. I should have it all together. I don't have time to figure myself out. I should have succeeded by now. I just need to push a little harder." You see, these thoughts don't yell or announce themselves. They whisper. They repeat quietly until they feel true. And because they've been on repeat so long, friend, you stopped noticing how much weight they carry. But here's the truth. Just because a thought is familiar doesn't mean it's true, helpful, or kind. Toxic thoughts don't just affect how you feel, they shape how you lead. They drain your energy, they shorten your patience, and they keep you in motion even when your soul needs rest. And over time, they disconnect you from your purpose. You start making decisions from pressure instead of clarity, from fear instead of trust, from survival instead of identity. That's why you can feel busy but unfulfilled, successful but empty, capable but unsure of what's next. The weight isn't always visible, but it's real. Let me pause here and ask you something. What thought, what soundtrack is quietly draining you the most right now? It might not be the loudest one, but it's likely the most constant one. What thought have you accepted as, well, that's just how things are? That thought has been costing you so much more than you realize. It's holding you captive and keeping you stuck. But just because you've carried a thought doesn't mean it gets to tell you your next step. This is worth repeating. The soundtrack you believe becomes the story you live and the tone that you lead with. And that leads us to key number 2. Once you recognize the soundtrack, the next step is to release it. Because you can't lead well carrying weight that doesn't belong to you. You see, many of these thoughts formed in survival seasons. They didn't just show up randomly. They developed when you needed them. Maybe there was a season when you had to hold everything together because no one else would. Maybe you were the strong one, the dependable one, the one who didn't fall apart. Maybe slowing down truly was not an option for you. Maybe pushing through was what kept things functioning. And maybe overthinking felt responsible. And in that season, those thoughts may have served you. But survival thoughts make terrible long-term leaders. What kept you afloat in one season can quietly begin to keep you stuck in the next. The voice that once said, "Don't drop the ball," now whispers, "If you slow down, everything will collapse." The voice that once protected you now pressures you. And here's the shift. Just because a thought helped you survive doesn't mean it gets to lead you now. Releasing isn't weakness, it's growth. And growth always creates space. Space to think clearly, space to breathe, space to lead from who you are instead of what you fear. Releasing doesn't mean denying responsibility. It means releasing the lie and refusing false responsibility. Let me say this clearly, because someone needs to hear it. You are not responsible for holding everything together, for never feeling uncertain, and for having it all figured out. If your soundtrack is the melody of your life, your purpose is the steady rhythm underneath it. Purpose reminds you of who you are when the noise gets loud. Purpose is the best of what you have to give others and experience fulfillment. Releasing the lies that don't serve you, that don't align with your purpose, creates space and freedom. And that leads us to our third key. Freedom doesn't come from silencing thoughts. It comes from replacing them. When you release a lie, you must replace it with truth, or the lie will return louder. If the lie is, "I have to hold it all together," the truth might be, "I am responsible for obedience, not outcomes." If the lie is, "I should be further by now," the truth might be, "Growth takes time, and I am still becoming." Truth, it's not a one-time realization. It's something you return to. And every time you return to truth, you strengthen your leadership. You build resilience, you create clarity, and you move forward even before you feel completely ready. Truth reminds you who you are, what you're called to, where your strength comes from, how you were designed to help others and to live a life of fulfillment. Here's a leadership shift that I encourage you to make this week. You can stop leading from pressure and start leading from purpose. This is where clarity begins to return. This is where heaviness lifts. If you want help walking through this process, recognizing the thought, releasing it, and replacing it with truth, I've created a simple workbook. It's free and it can help guide you. There is certainly no pressure, just space to begin. I'll link it below. So let's bring this all together. You feel heavy, not because you're failing, but because you're carrying thoughts that don't belong to you. You're repeating a chorus that's not moving you forward. So today, I want you to do these 3 things. Recognize the toxic thoughts, the broken soundtracks. Release the weight of carrying the lie that's attached to it and replace it with the truth. If this resonated with you, I'd love to hear from you. What thought feels heaviest right now? You can drop it in the comments below, and I'll even help you with a new soundtrack with a little truth to repeat. If this conversation is serving you, I would love for you to like and subscribe so that you don't miss what's coming next, and maybe even share it with a friend who needs it. We're building this step by step, and we are growing together little by little. Next time, we're going to talk about how to discern which thoughts deserve authority and which ones need to be replaced. Friend, you are not weak for feeling this weight. You're wise for noticing it. And the moment you notice is the moment that things begin to shift. It's the moment you change the story of your song, the soundtrack you repeat. It's leading you closer to your purpose. Let me remind you, you're not alone in this season.